Let's discuss Mangshi. Is it pronounced Mangji? No, it's actually Mangshi. It also has a tone. It's Mangshi, Mangshi, Mangshi. Right. Okay. So what's your take on her leaving her passport and phone behind? That part just seems incredibly strange to me. I know she was in contact with someone else. I desperately miss her, and I just need her to come back. This is a 23-year-old Joseph L. appearing on the local news to beg for any information about his wife, who has vanished. Everything is just so hazy. I have no idea what's happening. I don't know what I should be thinking. I'm just utterly bewildered. And I believe she is too. I'm not sure. I just have a feeling she'll return. Just days before, local authorities had responded to his call reporting his wife's disappearance. Hey, Joe. Hi. Hey, Officer Joseph here. Officer Joseph. I just wanted to stop by and gather a few details from you. Right. So here is her phone. Yes, her phone and her wedding ring were both just sitting on that table. L claimed he last saw her 2 nights prior. He said he was woken up at 5 a.m. the next morning by the cries of his infant daughter, but his wife was gone. 28-year-old Mangshi Ji was gone. Like any married pair, they had their share of relationship troubles. She's been behaving strangely lately, and she refused to tell me where she was going. The burdens of raising a child, combined with financial strain and sleepless nights, can overwhelm anyone. But with Joseph and Mangshi, something felt different. Today marks the 1-year anniversary since the missing Colombia woman, Mangshi Ji, was last seen. Mangshi never returned. I found out she was communicating with another person on the side, but I didn't know that until after she was gone. But you know, whatever it is she's doing, I just want her to be safe, and I truly hope she can, figure things out and come home. To me and Anna. We just need to have a long conversation, that's all. Who was this other person she was talking to? Could she have run away with them, abandoning her 1-year-old daughter? Or was there a more sinister explanation for why she vanished? Yeah. You want me to just desert her? To walk away? I know it. That's what it looks like you want. That's what I'm seeing. I would never desert her. Clandestine recordings, an investigation stretching over a year, and a pair of muddy hiking boots might hold the answer to everything. Just trust that the truth will eventually surface. The following account is based on official police files and exclusive footage. This is the Mangshi Ji investigation. We're in Columbia, Missouri, a quiet college town. The date is October 10th, 2019, and Joseph L. is calling 311, a civilian hotline. George, how can I assist you? Hello? Hi there. Yes, I need to file a missing persons report. Okay, I can certainly help you with that. He explained he hadn't seen his wife for nearly 2 days, since the evening of October 8th, and insisted she'd never done this before. What are you thinking? Do you believe she left? Are you two experiencing marital problems? What's your gut feeling? You know her better than I do. Well, okay. So, throughout our entire marriage, we've pretty much argued almost every single day. And it was always about the same things, over and over. It was like she never truly listened to me. But if you look at the last few months, maybe starting around the beginning of this past summer, that's when she started to really ignore me a lot. In recent months, the dynamic between them had shifted. Was it the strain of raising a baby, or something far worse? Do you believe she's actually missing and in danger, or do you think she's just avoiding you? Honestly, I really believe she left of her own free will. So, you believe she might attempt to return to China? Yes, absolutely. Like, she mentioned to me 3 weeks ago that she was planning to go back to China. All of Mangshi's family resides in China, where she was originally from. She had been feeling the absence of their support more acutely in recent months. Could that be where she went? Hey, Joe. Hi. Hey, it's Officer Joseph. Officer Joseph. I was just heading over to get a few details from you. That evening, police arrived at the home Joseph and Mangshi shared. Some friends were already present, helping with the search. They've been trying to go through her computer for me, since it's all in Chinese. Oh, right, yeah. And they were searching for, they were combing through her browser history to check if she'd booked any flights or made travel plans. Yeah, a quick scan of Mangshi's devices offered no clues to her whereabouts, but it did reveal something else. There it is. I actually stumbled upon this a bit ago. It's this kind of like a journal And in it, she talks about having some kind of secret love affair. She wrote down the guy's name, and it turns out it's this man right here. I see. I actually messaged him earlier and he did reply, but I'm pretty sure he's in China at the moment. Anyway, that journal entry mentions this other man and how she's like in love with him or something, and that she's no longer interested in her husband. But she also wrote that she's married and has a child, so she needed to stop messaging him like that. It seemed they weren't just growing apart. According to this journal, Joseph had discovered Mangshi was in love with another man. So, the night before, she told me she had to be up early for something. She wouldn't say what it was for. I specifically asked who she was meeting, and she just kept repeating, "Just me. Me." That was all she'd say. Could she have been planning to meet this other man? Or if he really was in China, was she preparing to get on a plane, leave her family, and start a new life? Where's your car? Is it in that parking lot? Yeah. And what about the keys? Yeah, the keys are here. They're on the kitchen counter. That's her usual spot for them. Right. Okay. When you woke up, was the door locked or unlocked? Yeah, it was unlocked. She left her phone in her car. Maybe she was trying to avoid being tracked. And it appears Joseph had a feeling this was coming. Yeah, pretty much whenever anything about just living in the area came up, basically anything she could latch onto, anything she could find to complain about, she would bring it up. Yeah, basically. She would just go, "Oh, if we were in China, this would be so much better, you know. China is so much better than this." Mangshi came to the United States in 2012 to study at the University of Missouri. She graduated in 2014 with a master's in mechanical and aerospace engineering. She was hired straight out of college by Nanova Biomaterials, a manufacturer of medical products. She was living her dream and making the most of her success in the US. And this is where she first met Joseph Elledge. He started at the company in 2015. She was his supervisor, 5 years older. But they quickly realized they had more in common than just work. Just a year and 7 months later, in 2017, he proposed at a park named the Devil's Icebox. While she might have been totally smitten with him, it was also a practical decision. Her visa was on the verge of expiring, and if she wanted to stay in the country where she'd been so successful, she would need a green card. Joseph was happy to help with that. They were married, and she was looking toward the future with a promising new job offer on the table. Then, she discovered she was pregnant. She hasn't been to work since having the baby, not since the baby was born. For a woman who had been so career-focused, Mangshi and Joseph decided it was best for her to become a stay-at-home mother. In the meantime, he had quit his job and was still trying to finish his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. What began as a fairy tale romance had quickly become very real, with finances dwindling and stress piling up. Maybe it was all too much for her. The initial days following a person's disappearance are critical, but those days ticked by without a single sign of Mangshi. The Columbia Police Department issued an appeal for information, but they came up with no solid leads. Their one and only source was Joseph. On October 15th, 6 days after Mangshi went missing, they brought him in for a formal interview. "I know you've already spoken to the patrol officer, but details sometimes get lost when passed along. And since we're the ones actively investigating the case, we want to hear everything directly from you. All right?" Joseph tells the investigator that he and Mangshi had been having minor disagreements, but nothing that would prompt her to leave, their relationship to crumble. She'd complain a bit, saying I wasn't doing enough for Anna, besides just playing with her or changing diapers. But honestly, I was completely stuck. I have no idea where any of that stuff is. And so, it was like a small disagreement, a little argument, but I wouldn't say it was a fight. You two were in counseling. Is that right? Yep. For a little while, yeah. What was that about? It was about our marriage. On Monday, October 7th, the two bickered over who was responsible for renewing their daughter's Medicaid. We were still just a little bit, distant from each other after that. The following day, Joseph had a class and left the house early. I didn't say goodbye to Mangshi. I don't know. I just felt that's just something that stuck with me, but I had to catch the bus. So I was actually in a rush, and I just remember that. He returned home at around 5:45, and they fed their daughter and put her to bed together. Talk about how distant we've been. So I just wanted to put down my phone and do something for her. She's been really, turning me down for sex. I've been trying to initiate things, and she's been completely shutting me down. It wasn't just the emotional connection that was missing. The physical intimacy was gone, too. Joseph claims that on that last night, he made an effort to fix that. So I did that for a bit, the massage, but then I just kind of got tired of doing it. It was a pretty long massage, and I was going kind of slow. I was trying to make it last because I wanted to prolong the time that we were together, doing something. So I gave her a slow, long massage, but I eventually stopped. I felt like I'd massaged her entire back. And so I stopped, and she just said, I told her I was done, and she just said, okay. And then she sort of told me, I don't know, during that time, she mentioned that she had to wake up early in the morning to go somewhere. And I asked her where she was going, who she was meeting. And I asked her about 3 times who she was meeting, and her only answer was me. The massage led to nothing more, and instead, the night soured. She was being vague about her plans for the next day, and they went to sleep upset with each other. And she told me she wanted to sleep and rolled over, away from me, with her back to me. She asked me to turn off the lights, and I did. This was around 9:30, between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. It was a little earlier than her usual bedtime. And so, I believed her because I thought, I figured she really did have to get up early. So yeah, I just let her be. And then I went into the living room. I watched a couple more YouTube videos and just kind of scrolled through YouTube, not doing much. I finally fell asleep at about 11:30. At 5 a.m., the cries of his daughter woke him up. I usually reach my hand over to where Mangshi is. I'll typically say something like, hey, I'm going to go get Anna. You just stay in bed, or something like that. But I put my hand over there, and she was gone. He couldn't explain why she was missing, but he thought there was no reason to be alarmed. He went back to sleep. When he woke up again around 8 a.m., Mangshi was still nowhere to be found. I just decided to stay home with Anna because, of course, she needs someone here. He took his daughter for a drive to Jefferson City using Mangshi's car. Later that day, he took her out again. And, we really enjoyed taking Anna on walks, so I wanted to go explore that area. So yeah, I got in my car, got back on 63 South again. According to him, Joseph had a peaceful day with his little girl, all the while hoping Mangshi would simply show up back at the house, but she never did. The next morning, October 10th, she was still gone. Someone knocked on the door, and I was actually right there, carrying Anna from the kitchen into the living room. So I just opened it. Well, I peeked out first. I couldn't quite make out who it was. He was standing on the first step. So it was a little hard to see, but I opened the door anyway, and it was home. And he told me that Mangshi's mom had contacted Home's dad, to have Home come by and check on Mangshi. You see, Mangshi called her mother in China every single day. When her mom didn't get that call, she had a friend who lived nearby go check on her. At that point, Joseph could no longer ignore the situation. I believe it was a Thursday evening when I finally got in touch with the police to file a missing person report, and that's when everything quickly began to unravel. While going through her belongings, he discovered her private online diary. I had to keep going through and getting it translated. I pretty much just copied the text and dropped it into Google Translate. It was then that I read something about her it mentioned a secret lover. The entry said she'd known some guy for about 3 weeks. It called him her first long-term secret love. He claims he was completely unaware she might have been unfaithful to him, though he admitted she had a pattern of mysterious behavior. And then there was this other instance when she left to go run a few errands. She needed to pay our utility bill, drop off our rent check, and I believe she planned on shopping for some outfits for Anna. Something to that effect. She was just going to do a little bit of shopping. But once again, she was gone for, I'm not sure, somewhere between 2 and 4 hours. And when she returned later, I was just completely stunned. I kept asking her what had taken so long. I said I thought you were just popping out for a moment, but she just sort of blew me off. Said it took a long while, and I can still picture it, actually. That time after she walked in, she just plopped down on the sofa and she was completely flushed. Her cheeks were just incredibly bright red. It got worse after I started pressing her about where she'd been and what she'd been up to for all that time. Where do you suspect she was? I have no idea. Joseph's entire approach to his marriage appeared to be one of avoidance, and this moment was no different. What is actually happening here, Joe? I wish I knew how to tell you. She's been acting a bit strangely lately. You just used a very peculiar turn of phrase with me. You said, I wish that I could tell you. See, if you had asked me that, my answer would be, I don't know. But you said, I wish I could tell you. What that suggests to me is that you're holding something back. Okay. Joseph was Mangshi's husband, and the last one to have seen her. If anything happened to her, he was naturally the police's primary person of interest. His conduct during the interview, his lengthy road trips on October 9th in Mangshi's own vehicle, every one of these raised serious alarm bells. Did you leave a note for her? No note at all. You didn't write, hey, don't worry about Anna and me. We're just out for a drive? You didn't do that, did you? No, I did not. Why is that? It just never crossed my mind. When he finally realized his wife was actually gone, he didn't call 911. He called 311, the non-emergency line for civilians. I'm trying not to, beat myself up over this. I'm trying to avoid thinking about what might be going on. Really, I'm just focused on graduating. I'm set to graduate this semester, and I can't afford to mess that up. Joe, I'm noticing you're talking a whole lot about yourself and how this is affecting you. To be clear, I'm not really concerned about you right now. My priority is finding her. The house showed no indication of a struggle, no forensic evidence, and no victim. Mangshi could have been anywhere, yet there was nothing to suggest she'd boarded a plane to China. Her financial accounts had been untouched since October 8th. She had also arranged to get baby food from a friend on October 9th, a meeting she never made. This all points to a woman who was planning for the immediate future, a future that very much included her daughter. It's inconceivable she would simply abandon her own child. On that very same day, Joseph agreed to an interview with KRCG. Okay, so tell me a little about who she is as a person. What made you fall for her? Well, she's an extremely dedicated individual. She's a very hard worker, which I really admire. That matters to me. And she's also, she's incredibly detail-oriented. And that's a quality that, frankly, I hadn't seen in many other people, especially not in a lot of women. But she was, a mechanical engineer, just like me. And that was another thing that felt really significant to me because I always sort of envisioned that I would run my own business someday, maybe a custom car shop or something, and I figured she could be helpful with that she could be part of it. I even mentioned that to her when we first got together, and I think she was intrigued by the concept. She's very drawn to the idea of working hard and earning money. When their relationship first began, he says he viewed Mangshi as a potential equal. But by October 2019, she was a stay-at-home mother, and based on her own writings, she was desperately searching for a way out. But she may not have been the only one. While being questioned, Joseph hands his phone to the authorities. What they find inside completely changes the investigation. He had amassed 10 hours of covertly taped conversations with his wife, and these weren't simple arguments. They revealed the story of a marriage that was utterly collapsing. I've told you so many times that the things you do and say cause me pain. I've only recently started to label it as abuse, but it was always abuse in the past. I just didn't have the word for it then. Well then, if every time we have a serious discussion it's considered abusive, then we have nothing to discuss. Life is supposed to be nothing but marshmallows and cotton candy. Sweet and fake. A complete fantasy. Am I being abusive right now? Yes, I am. I'm abusing you. It gives me pleasure. That is what makes me happy. See how happy I am? Just overjoyed. Crying with happiness. Joseph, in turn, alleges that Mangshi is the one mistreating him, and Mangshi's own misery is palpable. I abandoned my entire world. I turned down so many jobs. I sacrificed everything. Poured in so much of my time and money. I've been living with so little, without any desires or wants, without any joy. And this is what I get in return. She possessed a brilliant education and a bright future in her career. Her relationship with Joseph altered the course of her life, and it was more than just feeling suffocated. She also felt manipulated and completely alone. She had captured more than 4 hours of her own audio, documenting her side of things. This audio included clandestine recordings of their couple's therapy sessions that appeared to be fruitless. That sort of therapy only succeeds when both partners are committed to making it work. Joseph professed to be, but the tape suggested something else entirely. Mangshi had taken on some freelance translation jobs to fill her time and have some money of her own. But Joseph was not happy about it. "I can see you're stressed out, and I'm telling you, Mangshi, I can see this work is causing you anxiety. It's having a negative effect on your health, your behavior, and your capacity to look after Anna. I'm asking you, are you doing okay?" After their daughter's birth, Mangshi's mother came to stay for the first 100 days, a common practice in Chinese culture. But Joseph and his mother-in-law did not see eye to eye. "Do you recall what you said when your mom was visiting? You told me to stop looking at her like she was some kind of criminal. Well, you know something? She is one, and I'm not relaxed around her. I'm observing her like a hawk, as if she's a serpent about to steal my eggs." Mangshi's mother was her crucial support system. In a classic abuser tactic, Joseph worked to isolate her from that support. "You're just easily offended. You always find some excuse to be mad at me." It often seemed that Joseph would initiate the conflicts and then get angry at Mangshi's reaction to them. "So, I stab you by phoning her." "No, you stab me by ridiculing me. I believe it would be better for you to return to China. It's clear you Chinese don't fit in here. You can't handle a top-tier American, the best American. Do you understand? So why don't you just go?" On August 20th, 2019, a mere 7 weeks prior to Mangshi vanishing, matters came to a head. "You've been very abusive to me, and I believe I will raise that in court." "No, I refuse to listen to this." "Fine, we can address it in court." "So, I have a declaration to make, and I'm being absolutely sincere. I want to divorce you." Joseph had omitted every detail of this from his police statement. It was as if he was actively trying to force Mangshi from his life, and in the end, he succeeded. "Should I inform the court that you're abusive? Should I ask them to have you deported?" This arrangement works perfectly for thousands of families. You're the only problem. Thousands of worthless families. That's the kind you mean. Belittling people. That's your only skill. You can find all those news reports about men or women who brutalize their spouse, even kill them, you name it. Those are the thousands of families you're referring to. Joseph's threats are no longer just words. This isn't about divorce anymore. He's talking about murder. He says, "You know how I master nature? I destroy. I grab its head and I snap its neck. That's real power over nature. You think this society makes you feel powerful? Well, you better not forget that nature is still there. You are still just a woman, and that's part of nature. There's nature inside your brain." In that recording, Mangshi captured Joseph's real personality. Not the sincere, polite young man we saw with detectives, but a cruel and hateful man. He was also someone with a clear motive. He is heard saying, "So we can make this divorce fast, simple, and cheap, so it doesn't wreck our lives." Is that reasonable? Speaking for myself, I have no desire to spend $20,000 or $30,000 on a divorce. Is that something you want to do? He wanted out of the marriage, but he refused to pay the price. His own search history backs this up. He had been looking up local divorce attorneys and the court fee for a divorce. An officer asks, "I don't think the bottom part is visible. Is all of this basically just from that single day, August 31st, 2019? That's right. And what about the descriptions? In the description column, what's there? Filing fee for divorce. Filing fee for divorce? Is that what you just said? Correct. He was only a student with a student's income. If he could get away with it, murder was a very lucrative solution, but the police were closing in. With these recordings as evidence, they obtained a search warrant, and on October 25th, they arrested Joseph L. However, it wasn't for Mangshi's murder. They held him on a child abuse charge. Their proof was something Mangshi had sent to her mother on February 18th, nearly 8 months before she went missing. An investigator stated, "She showed us a photo on her phone of what looked to be an infant with a bruise on its buttocks. How would you describe the bruise that you observed?" Given the baby's size, it was a pretty serious bruise. When the authorities confronted Joseph with proof of his child's injury, he made no attempt to deny it. He confirmed he knew which incident we were referring to and admitted that he had caused the bruise. He said the event had taken place approximately 7 months earlier, when when Anna was around 3 to 5 months old. It happened at a time when Mangshi had been away from the home and he was looking after Anna. And she was crying, he was feeling stressed, and he just couldn't get her to be quiet. He mentioned that he figured it happened when he was holding Anna too forcefully and that he had been pinching Anna to attempt to make her be quiet. He was held on a $500,000 bond. This gave the investigation team the time they needed to piece together the evidence to figure out what became of Mangshi, and what they uncover is bone-chilling. An investigator reads, and then, starting with the first line, it reads Tuesday, October 8th. Then it says 7:30 a.m., drive to campus. Next it says 9:15 a.m., drive home. This was a written play-by-play of everything he had told investigators during his interview. Almost verbatim. After watching 1.5 videos, I set down the phone, reflected on how distant Mangshi had been. Then I went to the room. I lay down to her left. She was lying on her stomach. I draped my arm and leg over her. I asked her who she was speaking to. She replies, her mom. She says nothing further. I don't either. I was watching a few YouTube videos. I've just been doing that frequently recently. And then she entered the bedroom and was simply lying on the bed. It documents all of his actions from October 8th to October 10th, hour after hour. 6 o'clock. Don't guess. Complete silence is fine. 6:40. Don't guess what other people are feeling. Focus on my own feelings. 6:45. I wish I could be the one to question people. And then there's an arrow. It notes to add another arrow because I'm worried sick. Then it states there is only one feeling the public will identify with. Sorrow, sadness. 7:45. Has zero to do with bringing Mangshi home. This was not simply a journal. This was a calculated game plan, a guide on how to make himself sympathetic to the public and how to get in good with the police. Don't mix up past plus present and then an arrow. She is a great mother, and the word is capitalized and underlined. Why would he need to remind himself of that? Refer to Mangshi in the present tense if he thought she was still alive? On October 30th, Joseph's mother files for custody of his daughter. But after everything that had come to light, Mangshi's parents had zero trust for that side of the family. On November 3rd, an attorney representing them released a statement explaining that they continued to be deeply concerned about what Joseph's mom knew regarding Mangshi. They believed she hadn't been completely honest with authorities about information she had concerning Mangshi's disappearance. They launched their own fight for custody of the child. The exact role Joseph's mother played in all of this is still a mystery. The police never brought any charges against her, and she was actually permitted to keep partial custody. Meanwhile, investigators had a solid case against Joseph, but were missing a body. But in February 2020, just as the COVID-19 pandemic was beginning to sweep the globe, they made a very bold move. They filed charges against him for first-degree murder anyway. With Joseph behind bars, investigators began to meticulously retrace his movements during those long drives he took on October 9th. He claimed he drove all over the areas of Columbia, Kingdom City, and Jefferson City. One place he failed to mention was the Lamine River, a spot where he spent 30 minutes completely unaccounted for. That December, the police mounted a massive search with a dive team. They even built a levee to better search the spot where cadaver dogs had picked up a scent. Mangshi had now been missing for 2 months. It's a pretty wide area around this column, the support column. Right now, since we've hit the river bottom, divers are going to go in the water for their exploration. We're going to move the boom truck to the other side and start dislodging all the other debris on the other side. How deep is the water there, approximately? It was 16 feet. I don't know what it is today. We're pretty confident that we're looking in the right area, but they don't find her there. And the clock just keeps ticking. The state attempts to build its case against Joseph without Mangshi's body. But lacking that, most of the evidence was circumstantial. Her family started to lose hope that she would ever be found. Fast forward to March 2021, the world had been turned upside down by the pandemic, but the Columbia Police Department had not forgotten about Mangshi. Investigators were soon led to believe that skeletal remains discovered in a state park belonged to the missing Columbia woman. A hiker at Devil's Icebox, the very same park where Joseph had proposed to Mangshi back in 2017, noticed a purse lying in the dirt. He started clearing away some of the earth, and slowly, something absolutely awful began to emerge. It was Mangshi's skeleton. But that wasn't all. As investigators carefully combed through all the evidence, they uncovered something chilling. Joseph's own cell phone records placed him in the direct vicinity of Mangshi's burial site. When they had searched Joseph's home a year and a half earlier, they'd found a muddy pair of hiking boots. They seized the boots as evidence, just in case they turned out to be a vital clue. And now, that moment had come. They tested juniper tree needles that were found embedded in the treads of the boots against the DNA of the trees surrounding the area where Mangshi was found. It was a match. This was hard evidence tying Joseph directly to the scene of the crime. It was the last piece of the puzzle they needed to take him to trial. The medical examiner was unable to identify her cause of death, but they did find that 4 of her ribs were broken. The prosecution had a theory as to why. Mangshi found out that their daughter Anna's Medicaid had expired. Mangshi was worried about this because later that week, on Friday, October 11th, there was a doctor's appointment, and if that Medicaid wasn't renewed, it was going to be a major issue for Anna's appointment. And Mangshi was extremely concerned about this. The defendant's frustration with Mangshi was at an all-time high. He would later claim to the police that he went into the bedroom, where he said Mangshi was on the bed. He would later tell the police he discovered Mangshi was talking to her mother on the telephone. He would act like it was no big deal. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that the defendant had strictly prohibited her from talking to her mother. Joseph had already kicked Mangshi's mother out of the house and had spent their entire marriage trying to create a wedge between them. Finding Mangshi on the phone with her would have sent him into a rage. The last interaction, ladies and gentlemen, that the defendant said he ever had with Mangshi during the entire time that she was alive involved a massage. The defendant said that Mangshi was on her stomach on this bed. He said he climbed, those are his words, on her back to give her a massage. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to show that Mangshi was tiny. As a matter of fact, the defendant was almost 2 times larger than Mangshi and much stronger. He would later offer a very peculiar description of the massage he gave Mangshi. According to him, she was lying face down on the bed while he was working on her back. He claimed to be using, and this was his exact phrase, pressing maneuvers on her back. Now, when her body was finally discovered at Rockbridge, the autopsy revealed she had 4 broken ribs. These weren't random breaks. They were all clustered together, ribs 4, 5, and 6 on one side, and the 4th on the other. Crucially, these weren't just hairline fractures. The bones were snapped completely through, and the location of these injuries? It matched perfectly with the area where the defendant claimed he was applying those pressing maneuvers to her back. This led the prosecution to argue that Joseph had catastrophically injured his wife that night during that massage. They argued it wasn't a massage at all, but a violent outlet for his rage. He allegedly applied immense force to her back, shattering 4 ribs in the process. The question is, was that the fatal blow? It could have been, if the broken bones had damaged her internal organs. Or, perhaps, when he saw just how gravely he had injured her, he made the decision to finish what he started. Then, when Joseph's lawyer began to lay out their defense, the courtroom drama took a shocking turn. They admitted that Joseph had killed Mangshi, but they argued it was entirely accidental. Joseph then took the stand to tell his side of the story. So, you two would argue, right? And both of you felt like the other person just didn't get it. But then you'd make up and be affectionate again. That's correct. Would you say that was a pretty consistent pattern for most of the time you were married? Yes. Was that just how you saw things, or did Mangshi actually have a temper? She had a temper, and you were aware of this before you married her, correct? Yes. So how would this temper manifest itself? She would raise her voice, yell, and just keep talking and talking without really, listening to me. Joseph was clearly sticking to the same story he pushed in those secret recordings, that Mangshi was the real aggressor in the relationship, not him. This was the cornerstone of his entire defense. He began to explain his issues with her parents living with them. I explained to her that I was beginning to feel uncomfortable, and that I was struggling to connect with Anna, to spend time with Mangshi, and for us to figure out how to be a family, husband, wife, and child. And she just kept telling me over and over that it was important to her that her parents were there, and that she was putting her parents first ahead of Anna and me. And how did that make you feel? Very hurt and isolated. And that seems to be a part of Chinese culture, correct? Is that what she explained to you? Yes. So that was a foreign concept to you, right? Yes. So is it fair to say that over this period, you were feeling a growing sense of frustration? Absolutely. Every single word out of his mouth sounds engineered to paint him as the patient, reasonable husband in a very difficult marriage. What was your goal with making these recordings? Fundamentally, to help us understand each other. I figured it would be a good idea to review the recordings later, so we could discuss, what exactly had gone wrong, and hopefully prevent the same thing from happening again. But these attempts to find common ground were unsuccessful. Now, Joseph tells the court he was aware of Mangshi's affair with a man in China. He claims that on the night of October 8th, he confronted her about it. After they argued, he claims he tried to take his daughter for a walk, just to clear his head, but that Mangshi stood in his way. She was basically stopping me from standing up. Stopping you? How? What exactly did she do? She pushed me, and then she pushed me a second time, and at that point, I pushed back. Okay, right. And when you push back, where is this happening? In that same area. No, what does the same area mean? We need specifics. This is extremely important. Joe, what are you referring to when you say the same area? The spot where I was putting my shoes on. Okay, wait. I thought you said you had already walked toward the bedroom door. No. I stood up after getting my shoes on, and I was just starting to head in that direction. The prosecutor begins to apply pressure, honing in on Joseph's testimony, but he doesn't waver from his version of events. He insists that when Mangshi started to push him, he pushed back. So you weren't paying attention? What exactly was happening in the moment you shoved her? Right. She went backwards. She hit. Hit what? Where? Show us what happened. Let's see it. I can't say for sure what part of her hit. So you're claiming she just fell straight back? Is that the story? No, not exactly. She lost her balance and staggered back, bumping into it. Okay. So you're saying it wasn't a hard shove? More like you were trying to create space, but she still went down hard. Is that your testimony? I shoved her with a lot of force. He admits to shoving her against the kitchen island with enough force to fracture her ribs, but she got back on her feet and lunged at him again. He pushed her off a second time, but this shove was far more powerful. She went down in the kitchen. All right. And then? Tell me what happened. On the floor. She hit the floor. So your version is that she just fell straight back and landed on her head. As Joseph was surely aware, head trauma can be fatal. He claims that when Mangshi stood up, she seemed disoriented, yet he still left to go for a walk. By the time he got back, she was already in bed. So now we're circling back to the same story. It's basically the same account you gave back in 2019, where you wake up, right? Except this time, she hasn't just left. She's lifeless, lying right there in the bed. Is that correct? That is correct. Joseph's reaction to supposedly finding his wife's body next to him wasn't to dial 911, but rather to place her in his car and inter her body in the same park where he'd proposed. He claims he avoided calling the authorities because he was terrified, all while insisting her death was an accident. You had every opportunity to call 911, correct? I could have. Say again? He took the life of your wife. He didn't know for a fact that Mangshi had hit her head from the push, but his actions screamed guilt. The prosecution decided to call it what it was. He behaved like a guilty man because that's what he was. He killed her with intent. The prosecutor then took him back to the massage. So, on one hand you have Mangshi, at 5 feet, 100 pounds. And then there's Joe, at 6 feet, 180 pounds. Is that right? Positioned over her, correct? Something to that effect. Right. You were on top of her, straddling her, as she was face down on the bed. Correct? Yeah. Something along those lines. If you had chosen to attack her, she'd have been in a state of utter helplessness, correct? I couldn't say. Did you strike her with a toolbox, bringing it down hard right onto her back? No. Did you perhaps get on top of her and jump on her back? Did you smother her? No. Did you strangle her to the point that she urinated on the mattress? No. You've already conceded there was urine on that bed, correct? Yes. On the stand, the prosecutor pressed Joseph to confess. He refused, but his rationalizations were weak. For example, his claims about the script he drafted for his police interview. Yes, there is only one emotion, only one emotion the public will identify with is sorrow or sadness. And isn't it true you also reminded yourself to avoid speaking in the past tense, right, Joe? Well, That was a piece of advice I received. Whether he was coached or not, it represents a cold, calculated attempt to stage manage a death he claimed was accidental. I'm not sure. I feel like she'll return, but I just don't know. If there's one thing that's become clear, it's that Joseph L. is an accomplished liar. As he was recording that interview, Mangshi was already buried in a makeshift grave out in the woods. The defense pushed the jury for a manslaughter verdict. The prosecution was aiming for first-degree murder. On November 11, 2021, after 7 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with its verdict. Members of the jury, have you reached a verdict? Okay, please present it to the marshal. All right, Mr. L., would you please rise to hear the verdict? Verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Joseph Dwayne L., guilty of murder in the second degree. They found him guilty of second-degree murder instead of first, meaning they did not believe the act was premeditated. He is sentenced to 28 years in prison, a year for every year Mangshi lived. He received an additional 10 years for the count of child abuse, which will run after his murder sentence, totaling 38 years behind bars. He is currently incarcerated at the Southeast Correctional Center in Charleston, Missouri, and his appeal for a new trial has been rejected. In the meantime, his and Mangshi's daughter is being cared for by Joseph's mother, though she spends her summers over in China with Mangshi's parents, allowing her to connect with her heritage, just as her mother would have wanted. A shocking statistic reveals that the primary cause of death for expectant mothers in the United States is homicide committed by a domestic partner. If you, or anyone you know, is facing abuse, the U.S. National Domestic Violence Hotline is ready to help. They're available 24/7, 365 days a year at 800-799-7233. Or you can find them online at thehotline.org. What are your thoughts on this devastating case? Please share them with us in the comments section. For now, take care, follow our channel, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on The Decoder.